The epic of the Polynesian mariners commences with subtle advancements along remote coastlines, where intrepid early seafarers constructed vessels destined to reshape the trajectory of human endeavor. These were not commonplace boats, but rather elegant, twin-hulled craft engineered for traversing vast oceanic expanses, navigated not by compass or chart, but by celestial bodies, wave undulations, and the reservoir of ancestral knowledge. Long before European vessels ventured from the safety of terrestrial shores, Polynesian navigators had already transformed the Pacific into an expansive maritime network. Across 2 million square miles of open sea, they forged connections between islands through commerce, familial bonds, and audacious exploration. From Samoa to Hawaii, from the Marquesas to Aotearoa, they disseminated language, cultivated crops, and shared cultural traditions across distances previously deemed insurmountable. This is the chronicle of how the world's most formidable ocean became a home, and how its scattered islands were united by a brilliance born of daring and profound heritage. 4,000 years prior to Europeans daring to venture beyond the visible horizon, a revolution was underway along the rugged mountainous coasts of Taiwan. In fishing hamlets where bamboo dwellings clung above turquoise waters, artisans meticulously worked on novel vessels that would forever alter the landscape of human exploration. These were a departure from the dugout canoes known to their fathers, and far removed from the simple rafts that had served coastal communities since time immemorial. These were something entirely novel, vessels that married the inherent stability of twin hulls with the swiftness of wind propulsion. Craft designed to glide across ocean swells rather than battle against them. Life by the sea had shaped the Austronesian peoples of Taiwan for ages, their existence defined by the ebb and flow of tides and the allure of abundant marine life. However, as populations swelled and coastal resources grew scarce, some among them began to gaze beyond the familiar horizon with an eagerness that transcended mere curiosity. The immense Pacific beckoned, not as a barrier, but as a conduit, not as an adversary, but as a partner in humanity's grandest envisioned undertaking. In workshops permeated with the aroma of freshly cut bamboo and coconut fiber, master builders experimented with groundbreaking designs. The pivotal innovation occurred when they mastered the art of securely lashing two parallel hulls together with flexible crossbeams, thereby creating platforms that rode the waves like seabirds instead of cutting through them like logs. Stretching between the hulls was a deck capacious enough to accommodate families, livestock, and the vital cargo of seeds that would transform distant atolls into new abodes. The propulsion systems they devised proved equally groundbreaking. While Mediterranean peoples still grappled with square sails that could only harness winds blowing directly from behind, these maritime trailblazers crafted triangular sails, woven from pandanus leaves, capable of capturing breezes from virtually any direction. The underlying physics were elegantly simple. The distinctive claw-shaped sails could be adjusted to harness winds that would render other vessels immobile, while the twin-hull configuration offered a stability that no single-hulled craft could match in turbulent seas. Testing these advancements demanded courage bordering on recklessness. The initial crews venturing beyond the safety of coastal waters placed their lives in their hands, relying on bamboo lashings and woven sails to carry them across distances their forebears had never conceived of traversing. Many never returned, their fates known only to the ocean's inhabitants and its boundless blue depths. Yet, those who did return brought back sagas of lands glimpsed beyond the horizon, of winds that could guide a skilled helmsman to shores where no human foot had ever trod. By 20,000 before the Common Era, these maritime pioneers had sufficiently refined their skills to embark on an undertaking unprecedented in human history, the systematic exploration and settlement of the planet's largest water body. Their motivation was not simply wanderlust, but a confluence of necessity and opportunity. Taiwan's mountainous terrain could sustain only a limited population. As populations pressed against natural constraints, the sea presented the sole avenue of escape for those daring enough to embrace it. More than people and provisions, the vessels setting sail on those initial voyages carried the foundations of an entirely different future. Each expedition included breeding pairs of pigs and chickens, baskets filled with taro shoots and breadfruit seedlings, fishing nets, and stone implements. everything required to establish civilization on barren coral atolls. These ocean wanderers instinctively understood that successful colonization entailed not merely reaching new territories, but transforming them into sustainable domiciles. Their initial destination lay tantalizingly close: the Philippine archipelago, scattered across the horizon like emerald jewels upon blue silk. Atoll by atoll, bay by bay, these maritime explorers established outposts throughout the vast island chain. Each settlement evolved into a springboard for further exploration, a repository of knowledge concerning winds and currents, and a training ground where the subsequent generation acquired the skills their parents had innovated. From the Philippines, their expansion progressed eastward into Melanesia, where dark volcanic peaks emerged from abyssal depths like the spears of slumbering titans. Here, the wayfinders encountered novel challenges that rigorously tested every faculty they possessed. The Solomon Archipelago spanned hundreds of miles of open water, demanding precise seamanship with no margin for error. Vanuatu's active volcanoes generated their own unique weather patterns, producing winds and currents capable of trapping the unwary in perpetual cycles of disorientation. Nevertheless, with each successful passage and every new landfall, the accumulated expertise of these maritime masters grew increasingly sophisticated. They learned to interpret the subtle indications that revealed distant land, the way clouds coalesce differently over land masses compared to open water, how specific avian species invariably flew toward their roosts at sunset, the manner in which swells altered their character upon encountering submerged reefs or distant coastlines. Around 1500 before the Common Era, the descendants of Taiwan's boat builders achieved their most remarkable feat to date: the development of the Lapita cultural complex, which would extend their influence across a third of the Pacific. Named after a site in New Caledonia where their distinctive pottery was first unearthed, the Lapita people represented the ultimate culmination of Austronesian maritime genius. Their settlements proliferated like stepping stones across the southwestern Pacific, each a testament to adaptation and ingenuity. From their workshops emerged pottery of extraordinary beauty and technical refinement, vessels adorned with intricate geometric designs that would influence Pacific artistry for millennia. However, it was their mastery of the sea that truly distinguished them from all other cultures on Earth. The Lapita wayfinders had overcome challenges that would remain unconquered elsewhere for thousands of years. They could ascertain their position on featureless waters by reading wave patterns imperceptible to untrained eyes. They committed to memory the seasonal movements of stars, with an accuracy rivaling contemporary instruments. They possessed such a profound understanding of the Pacific's intricate wind systems that they could meticulously plan voyages spanning weeks, knowing precisely when seasonal shifts would provide the necessary conditions. Their canoes evolved in tandem with their expanding ambitions. The largest vessels measured over 100 feet from bow to stern, featuring decks broad enough to house entire extended families during month-long passages. Twin masts bore sails woven from the finest fibers, while steering oars, crafted from precious hardwoods, enabled helmsmen to maintain their course through conditions that would wreck lesser craft. Yet, the Lapita achievement extended far beyond mere technological prowess. They established the first truly oceanic civilization, a network of communities linked not by land, but by sea routes stretching for thousands of miles. Trade goods flowed along these maritime arteries: obsidian from volcanic sources, shell ornaments meticulously crafted by specialized artisans, and exotic foodstuffs found only on particular atolls. More crucially, knowledge traversed these same routes as helmsmen exchanged information about new territories, seasonal patterns, and survival techniques in oceanic environments. Eastward they advanced with an unwavering determination. Fiji fell to their outrigger canoes around 1300 before the Common Era, its mountainous terrain offering fertile volcanic soil, ideal for their agricultural practices. From Fiji, the next logical objectives beckoned: Tonga and Samoa, the archipelagos serving as the gateway to what would become known as Polynesia proper. These voyages pushed the boundaries of what Stone Age technology could accomplish. The distance from Fiji to Tonga spanned nearly 500 miles of open ocean, with no intermediate landfalls to offer refuge should adverse weather confront the seafarers. Success demanded not only technical proficiency, but also a sustained level of courage that transforms ordinary individuals into legendary figures. The wayfinders undertaking these voyages carried within their minds celestial maps of extraordinary complexity and precision. They knew by heart the rising and setting points of dozens of celestial bodies, understanding how each star's position shifted with the changing seasons, and how to leverage this knowledge to maintain their course across immense distances. They could decipher the Pacific itself like a vast compendium, interpreting the subtle variations in wave patterns that betrayed the presence of distant lands still obscured beneath the horizon. Weather phenomena became their allies rather than their adversaries. They learned to time their departures to capitalize on the most favorable trade winds. Recognizing that seasonal shifts in atmospheric pressure created opportune windows that might last mere days or weeks, they understood that the southwest monsoons, which brought devastating storms to some regions of the Pacific, provided ideal conditions for those adept enough to position themselves correctly. By 1000 before the Common Era, Tonga and Samoa had evolved into vibrant hubs of Polynesian culture, their harbors bustling with voyaging canoes, and their societies meticulously organized around the demands and opportunities of oceanic life. Chiefs who could trace their lineage back to the original wayfinders wielded authority not only over territory, but also over the sea lanes connecting their domains to the broader Pacific world. Within these maritime kingdoms, the art of seamanship attained new levels of sophistication. Master helmsmen rose to legendary status, their knowledge transmitted through carefully guarded lineages from father to son. They developed training methodologies that pushed human memory to its absolute limits, creating mental maps encompassing thousands of square miles of water and hundreds of individual atolls. The implements they employed were elegantly simple. Stick charts, constructed from bamboo and shells, encoded information about wave patterns and territorial positions within three-dimensional models comprehensible to those trained in their interpretation. Star compasses divided the horizon into precise directional sectors, each designated by the rising or setting of particular celestial bodies. Perhaps most remarkably, these wayfinders learned to rely on their own senses as instruments of exceptional accuracy. They could discern the presence of distant land by perceiving subtle shifts in wave patterns through the hulls of their vessels. They sensed alterations in wind direction hours before such changes became evident to untrained observers. They cultivated an almost preternatural ability to maintain their course during overcast nights when stars offered no guidance, drawing upon subtle environmental cues that contemporary science is only beginning to comprehend. The oral traditions that preserved this knowledge evolved into masterpieces of Pacific literature. Directional chants, requiring hours for recitation, contain detailed intelligence regarding star positions, wind patterns, seasonal variations, and the characteristics of hundreds of distinct atolls. These epic poems served concurrently as technical guides, historical records, and sacred texts, interweaving the practical and spiritual dimensions of oceanic existence in ways unattainable by land-bound cultures. From this era of transformation emerged myths that encapsulated the profound nature of their societal metamorphoses. Narratives of divine ancestors who first navigated the great waters became foundational stories for entire communities. Heroes such as Maui, who reputedly fished territories from the ocean depths using magical hooks, embodied the helmsman's power to discover new shores within seemingly empty expanses. Tales of celestial canoes transporting deities across the night sky offered both navigational guidance and spiritual inspiration for those who followed the stellar paths eastward. Religious beliefs adapted to the realities of oceanic life. The spirits of the sea gained importance commensurate with those of the land, while deities of wind and wave joined ancient agricultural gods within expanded pantheons. Sacred ceremonies invoked blessings for new expeditions and welcomed returning explorers home. Temples erected on promontories overlooking the water served as both religious centers and practical navigational aids for vessels approaching land. The transformation was complete. What had originated as a desperate quest for new fishing grounds had evolved into something unprecedented in human history. A civilization that embraced the Pacific as a home rather than a barrier, discovering within the vast blue not emptiness, but abundance, and not isolation, but connection. The descendants of Taiwan's boat builders had become something the world had never witnessed before. A people whose homeland was the sea itself, whose highways were currents and trade winds, and whose maps were inscribed in the positions of the stars. From their strongholds in western Polynesia, these maritime masters cast their gaze eastward toward the most remote reaches of the Pacific, their eyes devoid of fear, filled instead with anticipation. Ahead lay the ultimate challenge, the settlement of the Polynesian Triangle, an expanse of water vaster than all the world's continents combined. The winds were favorable, the stars beckoned, and the next generation of helmsmen stood ready to undertake the impossible once more. Behind them lay a succession of flourishing settlements, interconnected by sea routes alive with the constant passage of voyaging canoes. Ahead lay an oceanic wilderness that would test every skill they possessed and demand innovations yet to be conceived. However, they had spent a millennium preparing for this moment, and the blue horizon called to them with an irresistible voice. Morning mist clung to the lagoon like ancestral spirits reluctant to depart as the magnificent double-hulled vessel Hokulea prepared for a voyage that would stretch the very limits of human courage. From the shores of Samoa, where generations of master wavefinders had honed their art, emanated the sonorous call of conch shells, signaling the departure of an expedition that would either extend civilization to its furthest frontiers or vanish forever into the trackless blue. Hokulea herself represented the zenith of maritime technology. 60 feet of meticulously selected hardwood spanned between twin hulls, each carved from a single tree and shaped by fire and adze into forms capable of cleaving through heavy seas with the grace of flying fish. The platform connecting the hulls provided space for 22 souls, men, women, and children who carried within their very beings the genetic future of entire peoples yet unborn. Standing at the steering oar, Kalolo Kahulawa embodied 30 years of accumulated wisdom. His weathered hands remained steady on the polished wood, while his gaze swept across a horizon that held secrets invisible to ordinary mortals. Within his mind resided a three-dimensional map of the Pacific encompassing millions of square miles of seemingly empty water, each detail memorized with a precision that would remain unmatched by European instruments for another 1,000 years. Dawn heralded the turning of the tide, when the trade winds steadied from the southeast and the swells ran true toward the distant Marquesas. No grand pronouncements marked their departure. Such expeditions succeeded through skill and preparation, not ceremony. The families remaining ashore watched in silent reverence as the majestic craft caught the wind and commenced its passage toward the edge of the known world. Behind them, Samoa dissolved into the morning haze, its mountain peaks fading like memories into the boundless blue. Ahead lay 2,000 miles of open water, interrupted only by scattered atolls that barely breached the wave's surface. The challenge was staggering in its complexity. To locate targets smaller than Manhattan, within an area larger than the continental United States, relying solely on celestial bodies, wave patterns, and the subtle environmental cues that revealed the presence of territory still submerged beneath the horizon. Yet, Kalolo Kahulawa felt no apprehension, only the profound satisfaction of a master craftsman embarking on his magnum opus. The compass that existed within his mind divided the horizon into 32 precise sectors, each defined by the rising or setting of particular celestial bodies. Hokulea would adhere to the paths of specific constellations, adjusting its course as the seasons shifted, and different guides took their turns across the night sky. Those initial weeks subjected every skill the crew possessed to rigorous testing. The northeast trade winds, which should have propelled them steadily toward their destination, proved capricious, veering without warning and occasionally dissipating entirely. During these calms, the wayfinders delved into the ocean's deeper rhythms, sensing through the hull the long swells that had traveled thousands of miles from their origin in distant storms. Each wave pattern conveyed a narrative of weather systems far beyond their sight, of submerged mountain ranges that subtly reshaped the Pacific's pulse into recognizable signatures. 23 days out from Samoa, the indicators began to multiply. Clouds previously scattered and random started forming into patterns suggestive of elevated land masses. The water itself transformed in color, shifting from the profound blue of abyssal depths to a lighter turquoise, signaling the presence of shallow reefs. Most definitively, the birds appeared. Initially, the wandering albatross, whose presence held little specific meaning. Then, the tropic birds, whose range extended hundreds of miles from their nesting sites. And finally, the noddies and terns, whose daily flights revealed the direction of nearby shores. Those volcanic peaks rose from the sea like the formidable spears of slumbering giants, their summits catching the morning light while waterfalls cascaded down jungle-clad slopes. The sight elicited a cheer from the crew that echoed across the water. They had accomplished what their ancestors had only dared to dream of, extending their reach, marking another monumental stride toward the rising sun. Landfall signified the commencement of new challenges rather than the conclusion of existing ones. These remote territories lacked expansive lagoons or sheltered harbors, offering only narrow valleys where streams met the sea through breaches in formidable cliffs. The colonists who waded ashore that initial morning faced the daunting task of establishing civilization on terrain that seemed actively hostile to human habitation. Within a single generation, however, the valleys flourished with familiar crops. Taro patches ascended the hillsides in a series of terraces, while breadfruit trees provided both sustenance and the raw material for bark cloth. The colonist pigs thrived in the forests, their descendants eventually reaching enormous proportions in the absence of natural predators. Most significantly, the shipwrights commenced the construction of new vessels, preparing for the subsequent phase of expansion. These discoveries opened a vital corridor to the vast triangle of water that would ultimately define civilization at its greatest geographical extent. From these remote volcanic peaks, master wayfinders could navigate to 3 distinct destinations that would delineate the vertices of the largest cultural region in human history. To the north lay the Hawaiian archipelago, a chain of volcanic mountains stretching across 2,000 miles of the North Pacific. To the southeast, in a state of almost unimaginable isolation, lay Rapa Nui, the most geographically remote inhabited territory on the planet. Conversely, to the southwest, the vast landmass of Aotearoa beckoned, its dual territories offering resources and opportunities unlike any found within the tropical Pacific. The endeavor to reach what would eventually be recognized as the Sandwich Isles necessitated advancements that propelled seafaring capabilities to unprecedented levels. The distance separating the Marquesas Islands from the principal island extended to nearly 2,500 miles, traversing waters that no human had ever previously navigated. Even more daunting, this passage required sailing against the prevailing trade winds, meticulously charting a course through wind patterns that fluctuated with the changing seasons and weather systems that could prove catastrophic for the unprepared. Hawaii Lower, the navigator chosen for this supreme trial, had dedicated his youth to memorizing the routes leading northward, honing his ability to discern subtle variations in wave patterns that signaled the proximity of distant lands. His rigorous preparation included extended periods of contemplation and abstinence, spiritual disciplines designed to sharpen his perception of environmental cues that eluded ordinary individuals entirely. The magnificent vessel that transported Hawaii, Lower and his crew toward their predetermined destination, represented a revolutionary leap in maritime engineering. Extending almost 100 feet in length with a beam sufficiently broad to accommodate a small community, the ship integrated innovations derived from decades of oceanic voyages. Its hulls were designed for greater depth and seaworthiness compared to earlier models, while the deck provided ample space for extended families and all the provisions required for long-term settlement. The expedition progressed northward like an epic saga etched in celestial fire and sea spray. For weeks, the formidable vessel contended with opposing winds and colossal swells, its crew taking turns at the steering oars while Hawaii maintained his vigilant watch from the platform. The guiding compass adjusted its orientation each night as they advanced into more northerly latitudes, beneath a sky where unfamiliar constellations rotated overhead. 43 days after departing the Marquesas, the initial indications of land emerged. The towering summits of the main island pierced the horizon, resembling a divine revelation. Their snow-capped peaks seemed to float above clouds that appeared to brush against the very heavens. The volcanic forces responsible for their creation still smoldered within, expelling plumes of smoke and ash into the atmosphere, visible for hundreds of miles. Establishing settlements in these northern territories proved as arduous as reaching them. The volcanic terrain of the main island offered few natural harbors, and the continuous activity of Kilauea and Mauna Loa generated an environment entirely foreign to the settlers' experience. Nevertheless, within these difficulties lay extraordinary possibilities. The volcanic soil demonstrated exceptional fertility, supporting crops that attained sizes previously unknown in the coral atolls of the south. The vast expanse of the territory provided ample space for populations that could never have been sustained on smaller land masses. From the main island, the expansion continued across the entire archipelago. Each new discovery presented unique challenges and opportunities. Oahu's Pearl Harbor offered one of the finest natural harbors in the Pacific. Kauai's Garden Isle boasted some of the most fertile soil in the region. Maui's Halakala Crater fostered microclimates that supported diverse ecosystems. The settlers who dispersed throughout the chain developed sophisticated agricultural systems capable of eventually supporting populations numbering in the hundreds of thousands. While some navigators followed the paths to the north, others directed their focus toward an even more ambitious objective. Far to the southeast, beyond the reach of any land-based birds, lay the most isolated inhabited territory on Earth. The journey to this remote outpost necessitated crossing 2,300 miles of open water, navigated solely by celestial bodies through seas that had never borne the passage of human vessels. The leader of this ultimate expedition was Ho Mata, whose name signified Great Parent in his people's language. He had received visions of a distant territory where colossal stone effigies overlooked fertile valleys, dreams that propelled him to attempt the seemingly impossible. His preparations were as meticulous as they were comprehensive, stocking the vessels with everything necessary to establish civilization, on shores that might offer nothing but barren rock and salty spray. Reaching that distant outpost pushed the navigators to the absolute limits of their capabilities. The flotilla sailed southeastward from the Marquesas into increasingly empty waters as they left the main island chains behind. No birds marked their progress. No clouds revealed the presence of nearby land. Only the celestial bodies offered guidance, their nightly procession across the sky serving as the sole connection between the Voyagers and their destination. Their internal struggles proved just as demanding as the battles waged against the elements. Day after day, the crew confronted a horizon that offered only an unending expanse of blue. The allure of returning grew stronger with each succeeding dawn, while doubts regarding their destination preyed upon even the most devout. It was solely Homatua's unwavering conviction that propelled the expedition forward through the oppressive emptiness of the southeastern Pacific. When that remote outpost finally materialized, its low profile barely discernible above the waves, the sight seemed almost anticlimactic after weeks of anticipation. However, as the vessels drew nearer, the territory's true essence revealed itself. Here lay a realm of remarkable beauty and enigma. Its undulating hills were carpeted with grass that swayed like green oceans in the persistent wind. Peculiar statues lined the coasts, their stone visages gazing across the water with expressions that seemed to harbor the secrets of eternity. The settlers who established themselves in this most remote of territories encountered unique challenges that tested their adaptability to the extreme. The profound isolation necessitated careful management of every resource, with each decision weighed against its long-term repercussions. The scarcity of large trees spurred innovation in construction and tool-making, while the limited freshwater supply demanded sophisticated collection and storage systems. From these constraints emerged one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history. The colossal stone heads dotting the landscape, the Moai, represented achievements in engineering and artistry that rivaled anything produced